Good evening. My name is Charles Ezel, and I'm the principal of Bridgewater Ayrton High School. Let me be the first to officially welcome the class of 2024. We are very excited you're joining us. While the information you're going to get this evening is about the operations and how to navigate Bridgewater Ayrton High School, I suspect that what many of you really care most about is who we are as an institution and as individuals and what you can expect from us. So I'm going to speak briefly about that this evening. BRHS is a great school. Our faculty and staff are terrific. They care about what they do, and what they do very well. Bridgewater Ayrton High School is nationally recognized as being in the top half of the top 1% of all schools in the United States. I have never been to a high school that offers more opportunity to explore, engage, or grow. People are often impressed and concerned about our size. They're concerned about our ability to serve the individual student. We are large, and while that creates some challenges, the benefits conferred by the size of this institution far exceed the challenges that presents. The current enrollment at the high school is 2,754 students. We also have 328 faculty and staff. The size of our enrollment and staffing affords us tremendous opportunity to offer programs and experiences that the vast majority of schools in the state and nation can simply not rival. Beyond our curriculum, we have more than 130 clubs and activities, many of which are nationally recognized. The size of our institution also means that we have a deep well of support to tap in times of need, times like now. The law of large numbers dictates that we are experienced at handling challenges that may be new for students and families. In almost every case, you should be assured that we have seen a problem before and addressed it successfully. Ultimately, you always have a single point of contact if you or your child is having difficulty navigating: the principal. We have a principal educator for each grade who will loop with your child as they advance through the years. You are encouraged to contact your child's grade level administrator with questions and concerns that cannot be addressed by a teacher or a school counselor. The grade level administrator for the class of 2024 is Dr. Godown. He will remain with you on your 4-year journey. Before I turn the presentation over to Dr. Godown, I would like to share that we have a hard stop this evening. At 8:30, our servers will go dark for required maintenance. Dr. Godown, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ezel. If everyone would just please bear with me for a moment while I pull up the presentation. Great. First and foremost, thank you all very much for tuning in this evening. As Dr. Ezel had said, I know this is something that we would all love to do in person, as we historically do. However, it's just not possible at this time. Also, I just want to put out there that no matter how many times I find myself in these situations where we're doing a presentation like this virtually, I can't help but feel a little uncomfortable because I really miss the connections with everyone. When I'm talking to a screen as such, I kind of feel like I'm talking at people instead of talking with them. So please forgive any awkward silences or any other thing. But here's our mission statement. And one of the things that I always like to begin with is the fact that we are here for you and your children. And take it to heart when I say that I know this is a very difficult time for everyone, balancing home and work and school and all of the other responsibilities that we have. It's also very real in my home. I have 2 boys. One is going to be 20. He's a sophomore in college. And I have one going to be 17, who's a junior in high school. And every day we're very much navigating the field of virtual instruction, leading into hybrid instruction, and then hopefully before too long back to where we originally started from. This night is not about me or anything, but one of the things I would share with you is that this is my 24th year in education, and very proud of my career choice. Part of what makes this virtual learning and distance instruction so hard is that I really miss the daily interactions with your children. It's something that I really do take to heart. Our goals for this evening is to learn about the physical campus so you can see what it looks like here if you're one of our new parents. Review important policies and graduation requirements, become aware of some of the opportunities that we have for your children, understand what supports we have in place for you and your children, and leave knowing that we're all a team here together working for you and your family, and provide at the end an opportunity to ask questions. We'll be sending out a Google Doc in which you can type questions, and then Dr. Ezel and I will address those toward the end of the presentation. The other thing I'd like to say is that, in full disclosure, if you had viewed this PowerPoint that I had sent to your children, it is very much the same. I want us all to always be on the same page, working together, between home, school, and everywhere else. When I do this presentation with the students as they enter the high school, I ask them to look, and I find Icebergs to be very captivating for a number of reasons. So I always ask the students, and I'll ask you the same. What do you see here? What is this? Inevitably it comes out that it's an iceberg, and I acknowledge, yes, that is an iceberg. And then I say, your goal, what I want you to think about is, over the next 4 years at Bridgewater Rand High School, what do you need to do to get to the top of that iceberg? And with that said, the students inevitably offer some of these very same things: time management, extra help, study, rewards versus consequences. And then I ask them to think, what do you know about icebergs? What do you know about the characteristics of the iceberg? And then I say, hey, what do you see now? And as you look, that iceberg that seemed large at the top of your screen is now dwarfed by what lies below the water. And then we zoom out again, and then I ask that final question: what do you see there? And in a nutshell, what it comes down to is, when you look at the analogy of an iceberg, you only have 10% of that structure that's visible, that's seen, that you can see every day. And I allude to the fact that, it's much like high school. Our goal as you're here is to make you aware of not only that 10% of what is visible, but to be very cognizant of that 90% that lies beneath the water, which you don't see every day. And often the times that 90% is what can stop you from getting to your goals and achieving the most success that you could have. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that it was, in fact, an iceberg that took down the so-called unsinkable Titanic. As Dr. Ezel said, we do loop in an administrative team at the high school, so I will be with your children till they graduate. They'll have me as their primary contact point, which is great, because what it allows me to do is really form special relationships and get to know the students, know whether they're having a good day, whether they're having a bad day, how I can help them, what they can come to me for. But as Dr. Ezel said, he's the building principal. We also have another assistant principal in the 1,000 building who works primarily with the seniors. His name is Mr. Dragon. We have another assistant principal, Dr. Greenberg. She works with the juniors. She's next door to me in the 900 building. We have Ms. Zamrock, who works with the sophomores. She's in the 1,000 building with Mr. Dragon. And then, of course, myself, I'm in the 900 building with Dr. Ezel and Dr. Greenberg. As Dr. Ezel said, your children will use me as their primary contact for anything that they need, but at any time, they can feel free to see any one of us, and we all help and pitch in there. The other thing that really deserves a looking at is just the physical layout of our campus. As Dr. Ezel said, we're large. This is quite a large operation on a daily basis, between the amount of people, including students, staff, workers that are here. And although it seems big, it's very easy to navigate. You can see that on the far left, we have the 100 building. The 200 building sometimes gives the students a little bit of fits as they enter campus, because it kind of sits off to the side. And then it just goes up: 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. each academic building has what classes are offered in there, except for the 1,000 building, which is at top center of your screen. That is our only building on campus that is 2 stories tall, and it's a real hodgepodge of classes. We have all classes in there, from world language to English literature to science to math, just everything in there. And then the 900 building is guidance, administrative offices, and the library. The only thing that's different this year is, prior to leaving virtual instruction and entering to our hybrid instruction, what we had to do was do the best that we could to assure one-way traffic, pedestrian traffic on campus. So if you've been on campus already to pick up books and materials, you'll notice that we have green arrows that are being painted on the ground that gives directional flow, as well as footprints inside of each building that kind of show how the hallways are marked out. That's not really important to know yet, but a week and a half before we open, we'll make sure that we get those documents into you and your children's hands, so that they feel more comfortable when they come on campus for the first day. With the sheer size of the campus, I know one of the things that oftentimes people have questions about is, what do we do to maintain the safety and security of the building? Rest assured, again, I can't say enough how much the safety and security of your children are paramount to us. I say this often, and I mean it wholeheartedly, is that while your students or while your children are in our presence, we treat them as if they are our own children. We would not do or ask anything of them that we would not ask our own to do. But I just want to point out that we do have policies, procedures, and protocols that address every form of safety and security. One of the things that you'll see, and the students will see, is we have visible security, such as cameras. We have over 100 cameras all around campus that, keep an eye on things. We have 2 full-time student resource officers from the Bridgewater Police that work with us daily. We have a full-time security guard for parking and, student assistance as well. And it's also important to know that we have invisible security. We have the security that is unseen. We have many cyber measures that are in place that give us some safety and look over things. We have a visitors check-in system that everyone that comes on campus, we scan an ID, and what it does is it runs a background check, as well as anyone that should not be visiting campus. And should it come up, our security is immediately notified to come handle the situation. And the important thing that I talk to your children about, as well as I'll mention to you, is we do in fact monitor email and internet traffic. One of the things that we started last year was a program called Bark. And what Bark does is it monitors any type of email activity on Google Docs that has certain trigger words, and it'll send the grade level administrator notifications of inappropriate technology use. And then in addition, we also have mental health and wellness identification and in-person programs for students. I did mention we have student resource officers. They are not here with us this evening, but they are Officer Van Doren and Officer Hahn. They are full-time Bridgewater police officers that work with us here daily. And the students are told that they can utilize Officers Van Doren and Hahn for any questions or concerns that they have, as well as you. The officers that work with us are part of the Bridgewater Police Department's Youth Services Bureau. So if you deal with any of them out in the community, they would also deal with us at school. But the student resource officers also walk around, they're present on campus, they speak with students, they form comfortable relationships. They also do presentations to our classes, such as driver's education. They work with our forensics classes here, and they're just a real welcome bunch, group of guys to work with the students. Additional on-campus supports that we have is each of the students have a school counselor, which is located in the 900 building. Their classroom teachers they'll form bonds with. Some, they'll go to the teachers, they'll feel comfortable. We have 2 students assistance counselors, Ms. Mizial and Ms. Zilberman. They're both located in the 1000 building. The primary contact for freshmen and sophomore students are Ms. Mizial. And we also have our school nurses, as well as grade level administrators. One of the things that we ask of the students is to always have their IDs with them at all times. The IDs are used for entrance into the library, cafeterias. This year, they will also be swiping in and out of restrooms. Eventually, what we'll also be doing is we're transitioning the campus over to lock and unlock doors with student IDs. Student IDs are also important if your child comes into school late, they present their ID at the attendance office. They scan it, it marks them, it gives them a pass, and it admits them to staff or to class. The other thing about student IDs is since there are so many students on campus, it's important for the students to know, and then they know that each of us have a certain color coded lanyard that we wear. Teachers and administrators wear a blue lanyard. Substitutes have a green lanyard. Any type of maintenance people or contracted services, they all have different colored IDs and lanyards on campus. That way we can quickly, easily know if that individual belongs on campus or if it's someone that we need to address. In addition to IDs, another very important thing is the student handbook. The student handbook is located on our website. And in that handbook, in addition to the rules, regulations, and procedures, it talks about everything from how to register for class. It talks about our grading procedures. It talks about good study habits and everything in between. So it's a very much a useful tool that we encourage the students to regularly check in on. Lockers. Yes, I should say I'll explain the use of lockers, and then I'll add the COVID-19 use of the lockers. When the students arrive on campus as freshmen, they are assigned a locker. That locker will be theirs for their duration here, so they'll carry that same locker through grades 9, 10, 11th, and 12th. Their homeroom will also be the same. We ask and we instruct the students to keep their locker combination confidential. We ask them to not set the locker, jam it open so that it opens automatically with just using your finger to pop it open. And again, use the locker, both before, after, and during school. Again, if you have been on campus to pick up the barrage of textbooks, if the students carried every one of their books around at every time, it's quite heavy. So we encourage them to use the lockers. With that said, I'll say that not many people do. They just prefer to carry their book bags around with them with all of their books. But there's plenty of time to get from class to class and to locker before class starts. Now, of course, with lockers, because this year needs to be different than every other ones, as long as our school is operating under COVID-19 restrictions, we are not permitted to use hall lockers. So the students will be assigned lockers, but they will also be instructed they will be told not to use them until we remove ourselves from this phase. And again, physical education lockers. These are a little bit different than the hall lockers. The hall lockers have the built-in combinations. However, for the phys ed lockers, they must bring their own lock, and all personal clothing, books, valuables should be locked during the PE period. And then after phys ed is over, the students remove their stuff and bring their bags with them. So that's the other thing that we encourage them to do is use the hall locker. So that way they're not carrying not only their PE clothes and their textbooks, just kind of put the PE clothes back into the hall locker or whatnot. With that said, I can solidly go on record and say that we have never had anything stolen out of a locked hall locker or a PE locker that was locked. Anything that does go missing is usually because it was left lying around. So we definitely encourage the students to lock up their valuables at all times. However, again, during COVID-19, we are not permitted to use PE lockers. So what we'll have in place is we'll have bins when we come back to hybrid instruction and PE resumes. The students will not change for phys ed. They'll be asked to wear comfortable shoes, and there'll be limited activities, but we'll have bins and squares for the students to secure their stuff in the gyms while they're participating in phys ed classes. Unsupervised areas. One of the things I think that the students are most smitten with when they arrive on our campus is the fact that between classes we transition outside. I can tell you it's fantastic when the weather is great. When the weather is not so great, it's really not that pleasant. I find it humorous that we have a California campus design in the middle of New Jersey. It's great when it's great, but when it's bad, yikes. But what we say to the students while they're transitioning is, you should always be in an area that you can see staff. We have staff stationed all around the campus, all around the buildings. And we point out that an unsupervised area can be considered as locations where staff members are not present. They include faculty or senior parking lots, the walkway to the field house, behind the gymnasiums, on the athletic fields, or behind the dugouts or athletic facilities when they're not with their assigned PE classes. Cell phones, that's another big change for students here because we do permit the use of cell phones while students are transitioning between classes or in their lunch period. However, again, we stress that with these added privileges do come extra added responsibilities. As a general rule of thumb, we make it clear to the students that when they're walking into a class, that cell phone needs to be put away. So if they arrive to class, 2 minutes before it starts, they're not permitted to be on the phone, texting, talking to anyone while they're sitting in the learning environment. We often go back and forth with this about the use of cell phones, but the bottom line is we recognize, as do I use with my children, is that, you will probably need to get in touch with your children at one time or another. It's perfectly okay to shoot them a text or give them a call to leave a message. What the student should know is to always have their ringer off. That's the thing because they are issued behavior infractions if cell phones ring in class or they answer in class or text in class. So it's really a between the minute thing. We also recognize that there will be emergencies on your part, as well as there will be times where they'll forget. So we do take that into consideration. However, one of the things that we do not have any leeway or discretion on is we take it very seriously that cell phones slash recording devices should not at any time be used to take pictures, videos, to send or receive any visual or video images of their peers without the other consent. That can be problematic for a number of reasons. At the high school, we also have a very stringent attendance requirements. Now, keep in mind that our attendance is driven by state. When the students enter ninth grade, one of the things that they need to get used to is that if they don't attend class, they won't get credit and they won't pass the class. I know for some students, it's a very difficult transition because they've heard since they've entered, education that if you don't pass the class and you don't go to school, you won't be promoted, but somehow they do get promoted. I can tell you at the high school level, the state determines grade placement and credit status. So for a full year course, a student can miss up to 16 days. For a half year or a semester course, they can miss up to 8 days. For a physical education class, which runs 3 marking periods, they're permitted to miss 12 days. And for a health class, which is difficult because it's only a marking period long, they can miss 4 days. This becomes problematic sometimes when vacations and things are scheduled while the student is in health because we do not have the discretion to declare a vacation as an excused absence in the class. However, we also realize that extenuating circumstances do occur. There are sicknesses, there are emergencies. So if at any time in one of these courses, your student eclipses the maximum amount of days, they can fill out paperwork, submit it to, we have an attendance appeals committee. They hear the cases, look at why, and they can decide whether to grant or withhold credit. Based on the student's reason. And again, it's not because we're being difficult, but it's because we have to adhere to the state of New Jersey Department of Education guidelines for seat time in class and absences. With that said, again, during distance learning, these very same attendance requirements exist. So we ask that you make sure that every day your child is present for homeroom and the daily class check-in, and also make sure they're present into each class. This is also a kind of a new feature for the students is the fact that we have two forms of attendance: the daily attendance, which they check in the morning, that's reported to the state whether your child is in school for the day, and then there's also the attendance in every single class for that day, and that is what drives our seat time. Again, there are two categories of absences by the state: unexcused and excused. If you look at the reasons for unexcused absences, they are stringent: personal illness, death in family, truancy, medical appointments, college visitations. More than 20 minutes late to a class is considered an absence. Nurse's office visits, driver's license test, take your child to work day. However, I will say, just because they're labeled as unexcused absences, it does not mean that during an appeal that these would not be granted, as it's okay, it's permissible to miss the class. But one of the things that we have to adhere to is when we report these to the state, they're considered unexcused absences. With that said, and some of these you may find ironic, but what the state considered excused absences is field trips, athletic competitions, basically any school activity that we provide the students with. Here's the ironic part: if a student is suspended from school, the state excuses that as an absence. Religious holidays, as recognized by the New Jersey Department of Education, are excused. Mandatory quarantines ordered by a medical professional is excused, and court appearances are excused. Tardiness to school. One of the things that we really drive home is that it's important to be on time. I'm a habitual early person, I guess. My parents used to say, and the coaches I played for, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't bother coming. Of course, that's not true. But, you'll hear students say, oh, it's only study hall first period, or I only have physical education first period, or I only have this. It doesn't matter. The students really need to be here by 7:20 a.m. during the regular school day. When they do come in late, they report to the attendance office. Like we had said before, they get a pass and are administered or permitted to go to class. Excessive tardies to school, the students receive administrative detentions for. Keep in mind that when we start back to school, we don't adhere to this right away. We give the students a chance to work in, find their classes. There's a good week and a half, 2 weeks before we start this in effect. And once the school year really gets off to a start, we don't start giving administrative detentions for latenesses to school until after the fourth time. However, late to classes, for each time you're late to class, that does get an administrative detention. And the students are usually very honest when we speak with them and we ask, well, why were you late? It's, oh, I was late because I was talking to my friends, or I tried to go to the cafeteria to get something to eat during their not scheduled lunch. And believe me, if a student is having a legitimate problem getting to class on time, we work with them and we don't adhere to the administrative detentions. As long as they come, talk to me, we work on a plan, and then we work there with them. There's been cases that the students say, I can't get from the 800 building to the 200 building in 6 minutes. So I'll actually meet with them and I'll walk to class with them. I'll see where they walk, how they walk. I'll say, hey, how about you try this way? How about you try this way? It's also important to note, while we're working on the hybrid schedule and we do have one-way traffic down the walkways, we did extend our passing time to 8 minutes to allow for students to go out of their way a little bit. Behavioral expectations. Going back, we have a lot of people here. The general rules of the school are really, we don't ask for anything other than people to be polite and respectful. We remind students that lack of knowledge regarding school rules will not be accepted as an excuse for breaking the rules. When there are behavioral problems, I always sit and I talk with the students and we go through why did you do it? What could you have done differently? How can this be, stopped in the future? Consequences are present, they happen, but when I work with your children, my main concern and my main desire is to stop the behavior, extinguish it, not punish it. But again, there are consequences for behavior. Under distance learning, the same behavioral expectations exist as if they were in the classroom. Disrupting a virtual class lesson is the same as disrupting an in-person lesson. One of the issues that we had already this year is students giving other students codes to their classes Google Meets, and a student that wasn't registered for the class would show up, play loud music, disrupt the class in one way or another. It's not very fruitful because you can't get into one of our Google lessons without using their GAPS account. So in order to gain access to the class, the student's name, picture, and everything else is presented to the other teacher. So we know who is going in and out of the classrooms. We did deal with this at the beginning of the school year. We contacted the students, contacted the parents, and since we started Tuesday, that is diminishing rather quickly. The other thing about virtual instruction that and even hybrid and in-person instruction that we talk with the students about is academic integrity. One of the things that I take very seriously is a person's word, and trust, integrity, honor is very important to me. So we talk to the students, and I talk to the students a lot about cheating and plagiarism. One of the things that they need to be aware of is that we use software like Turnitin.com, as I had mentioned, Bark, and basically all activity that runs through our GAP accounts is monitored. When students take a picture of their work and send it to someone else, we get pictures of that. We are aware of that, and we know that information is being shared between the students. And one of the things that come with academic integrity is the consequence of a 0 on the assignment, which weighs very heavily, especially if it was a test or a midterm or a final exam. We do have basement grades, which means if a student tries their best, the lowest they can get is a certain grade. However, with that said, a violation of academic integrity cancels that, and the student receives a 0. And a 0 on even a homework assignment is pretty impactful. So one of the things that we really drive home is, do the best work you can and earn it yourself rather than trying to go about an unfair way to get it. I think it's worthy to mention this again. These things that you see on here for the out-of-school suspensions, these are what you would find in any high school, basically across the United States. And we have very little discretion if acts of alcohol, drugs, theft, fights, assaults, and recidivisms are committed. We do suspend students anywhere from 4 to 10 days. There are some times where we go in excess of 10 days, and there's a board hearing for the students. One of the things that I want to drive home is the use of social media and sending pictures, whether you're on school grounds or at home. We'll get to a slide later, but just because the students are not on school grounds, it doesn't mean that school consequences don't follow. Drugs, alcohol, theft, fights, and assaults are also referred to our student resource officers, and there are possible charges with the Bridgewater Police Department. But again, it's not our goal. I think the best, we want the kids in school, and out of school suspensions is the last resort, but it is a reality at the high school level for sure. One of the things that we've been targeting heavily is smoking and vaping. While there's not much smoking, vaping is very present at different times. But again, no discretion. Vaping possession or use is a 3-day out of school suspension. We also refer them to the Board of Health. Second offenses includes court appearances and fines. One of the things that we're working on, myself and Dr. Greenberg, is an introduction to some restorative practices, because one of the things that we want to make sure is if a student is vaping, using any type of tobacco, that we provide some sort of rehabilitation and some alternatives for out of school suspension, because we want the students here. I always shudder when I do have to suspend people, because largely as adults, my wife and myself work. The last thing we want to do is to send a student home to a home environment where they're going to be alone all day to let's take it to the extreme, sleep all day, watch TV, not engage in schoolwork, or if they are, nicotine users, having the chance to be unsupervised and vape. Any type of student discipline is not meant to inconvenience the parents in any way. As I mentioned before, off-campus activities, there are consequences, both school and legal ramifications for students that engage in inappropriate behavior mainly, we have a large problem when it does happen. It usually revolves around the use of social media, sending videos, receiving videos or pictures, and we need to get involved, because if a student's action while they're off campus disrupts our learning environment, we have to get involved. Another thing that we talk about every year, and the students have had this for a time, is the harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We refer to it HIB. Again, it's any gesture perceived as being motivated by an actual or perceived characteristic, and the state identifies 17 protected classes. Again, takes place on or off school property that disrupts the learning environment. uh, that any reasonable person should know could cause emotional or physical harm, insults or demeans a student group in any way, or creates a hostile educational or learning environment for the students. And again, in full disclosure, I take these very serious, because I really believe that, we should be the best people we can be, and we can certainly have a good time without putting down or belittling or harassing, intimidating, or bullying any of their peers. If this is happening, we instruct the students and yourself on how to report anything that they suspect may be incidents of HIB. They can be reported to myself, the grade level administrator, a school counselor, student assistance counselor, basically any adult on campus. It can be in person, it can be an email, it can be a phone call. Under distance learning, the same methods apply. If you or your children think anything is going on, reach out to one of us, make us aware of the situation, and let us intervene. It's funny because if we were in person, I would always ask for a show of hands. How many parents is this your first time having a student go through the system? Uh, as I said, this is my 24th year in education, and now my children at home are a little bit older. But I remember when the late middle school, entering high school, it seemed as if I became the person that used to know everything to the person that knows nothing. I think if you asked my kids, they'd be surprised that I get through life without any of their advice. But it's tough from a parent sometime at this time, because it's really hard to communicate with the students, your children. They may not want to share. You ask them how school went, how the day go, you get the good. And one of the things that I think some of the times the students struggle with is they're at the age now where they want to try to handle everything themselves, and sometimes they just can't. But while they're trying to handle it themselves, they kind of let the situation grow and develop, and it becomes a little bit worse. And that's when I like to step in and say, hey, look, just come to me, go to your parent, go to one of these people, let us help. uh, Cafeterias. We have two cafeterias on campus. We have Cafeteria A, which is known as the large cafeteria. It seats about 550 students. We also have Cafeteria B, which is the small cafeteria, fits about 250 students. On any day, the students can go to either one of the cafeterias. They both serve the same food. However, what we do is we ask that once they get to a cafeteria, that's the one that they commit to that day. Now, truth be told, one of the things that happens, and this is observed every year, generally the tables that the students pick the first day of school, if I did a survey, if I took a picture the first day and took a picture the last day, they kind of tend to always stay at that same table. But they're free to go back and forth. The cafeterias during the hybrid schedule, you'll notice that lunch periods will not be put into the schedule. They don't exist, because we won't be serving lunch. We will have kiosks set up and food available on a grab and go basis, but we will not have our formal lunch options there. Graduation requirements. So from freshman year to senior, the students need to get 120 credits as a minimum. Again, as a minimum, what it consists of is 4 years of an English class, 4 years of health and PE, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, 3 years of social studies, one world language, one performing art, which could be music, art, or a drama class, one practical art, which could be anything from a business or IT related course, wood shop, some of our programming classes. Generally, our students do not have a problem fulfilling those graduation requirements. I would say most of our students carry an average course load of between 35 and 40 credits per year. So usually by the time the students reach their senior year, the only classes that are required are one English class, one health and PE class. The rest of the time are filled with electives that they, want to see what they do. One of the things that I do is I always meet with the kids and I say, hey, try something that you think you may or may not like. There's been classes that I've taken that I thought I would love, and I ended up not liking them. There was classes that I took that I said, boy, I really got this class. I don't want it. And then I ended up loving it. So this is the time to explore. This is the time to take chances. This is the time to really, figure out what it is you want to do after high school. And our course catalog, which you can see online under our school counseling, pages, as Dr. Ezel said, one of the things about having a large school is the incredible opportunities that exist. Uh, Again, back to, sometimes they just don't want to listen to parents. We have a very active peer-to-peer mediation and mentoring. We have juniors and seniors that are trained, and they meet particularly with freshmen to discuss. It's a voluntary program, but they talk about the demands of high school, study habits, time management skills, keys to success. And sometimes it just means a lot more coming from one of their peers rather than you or I. They talk about how to schedule courses. They talk about how to get involved. Our different club sports. We have over 100 clubs and activities. Over 30 sports that the students can get in. So there's something here for everyone. One of the things that we do ask the student is to really think about what they want to get involved with. They shouldn't feel obligated to join every club that they see. We always have a club fair where the different clubs set up around the school and they talk about what they do. One of the things that we encourage is just find an interest and kind of go with it. It's better to be in one or two clubs, be active in the club, perhaps maybe even explore a leadership opportunity in the club and be, the genuine active member rather than join 10 clubs just in name only and not do anything for it. One of the things that I shared with your children is I said, these are what I'll ask of your parents. And sometimes they'll say, oh man, this is annoying. But I say, talk with them, encourage them to get involved, encourage them to stay away from bullying, gossiping, support the school and policy and back to school procedures, attend back to school night, always check in on their power school and their grades and work with us. Monitor that phone and internet activity. Investigate anything if you suspect drug or alcohol use. One of the things that I always say is, it's better to find out that a student is experimenting with drug or alcohol and be able to address it rather than let the problem go unaddressed and perhaps let it grow. Help with homework. It's fine to sit down and work through it. Register for School Messenger. That's one of our primary vehicles of important communication that is sent out. Check into that power school. It's important to set expectations as well as limitations and be supportive, be patient. Sometimes it takes time. Entering high school is a big transition time, and some people adjust to it more easily and readily than others, but everybody will. I assure you it happens, and it happens quite naturally. If you ever need any information or any questions, comments, concerns, especially because I realize this talk this evening is very one-sided, reach out to me at any time. My phone number is right there. My email is right there. I'll get back to you, ASAP. And please, nothing is off the table. We can discuss anything that you feel. At this time, I'd like to open it up for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, invite Dr. Ezel to join us again. And then what we'll do is we'll pull up the Google Doc and see if there were any type of questions that were submitted.
Thank you, Dr. Godown. I've looked over some questions, so I have a couple that I can answer right away. So someone asked if books for the spring semester will be issued in February. So our expectation is that we're going to be in a hybrid schedule. So as we approach the spring semester, we will certainly be distributing books for the second half of the year. It will likely look very similar to what we've done now. However, we anticipate we have students in school, so we'll be able to give them books right there. But for those students who are virtual, we'll have a system in place that's very much like the one that we've been doing. And so that's what you should expect. Another person asked about, we're going to send another survey asking parents if they want to remain virtual or return to school on October 12th. So we sent that survey out once before. And right now, the information that we have, so if a student is virtual, then at this point in time, they will remain virtual until the end of the first marking cycle. If a student is returning to school on the hybrid model, then at any time a student can decide, you know what, I've decided, or a family and student can decide, you know what, I've decided that the hybrid model isn't for us right now and we'd like to shift to virtual. That can happen at any time once we are on hybrid instruction. Ryan asked a clever question. He said, first car model. I'm assuming he means the first car I drove, which was a 1969 Pontiac Le Mans. I love that car. Someone said, can you send parents a copy of...
My first car was a 1969 Camaro. So I just want to jump in there too.
Thank you, Dr. Green. I didn't mean to ignore you.
Wait, getting back to the old adage about how students just don't listen to parents. It was after my junior prom, and my parents told me, do not drive down to the beach after the prom. You'll wreck your car. No, no, no. Guess what? I drove to the beach. I was rear-ended, thrown out in traffic, and I totaled my Camaro. It was one of the 7 humble calls that I had to make to my parents and quickly say, you're right. Now come help me. I wish they were tuning into this to hear that again. They like that.
Can you send parents a copy of this presentation? So we are recording this presentation so that we can push that out to you when it's finished. And then I received one question that was very specific about an athlete and a specific need that they had. I'm going to address that. I'll let Dr. Godin address that one offline right now. And if anyone would like to ask any more questions, because interestingly, those are the 5 questions we've received so far. If you look at the bottom of the YouTube page, underneath the freshman parent and guardian orientation night, underneath where it says subscribe, you'll see a link. If you'd like to drop some questions, you just click that there and drop some questions in there. We can answer them. I anticipate that some folks were hoping for more information regarding the hybrid schedule that's coming. I want to be clear that there's going to be a comprehensive communication coming out that that I'm going to send to the whole community that will be very much like the one that I created for the virtual, and that will be for the hybrid. It's going to be more detailed because there's going to be more nuance to it. So that's going to be coming out. And this was really a conversation about being a freshman and what it means to come into high school. For some of you, this isn't new, but for others, this is very new. And so I wanted to make sure that we were focused specifically on that piece of this. So we had a question here. How about sports activity? Is it going to start to? So actually athletics are already ongoing. They are happening right now. And we are following the trends and the NJSIAA guidelines to make sure that everything we do is safe. And so they're ongoing as we speak. When will club information be shared and will it be run remotely? So when our clubs are open and up and running, everything will be done virtually. We will not be doing in-person clubs in school. There's a whole host of reasons for that. The most important one is that we have to make sure that we are appropriately cleaning the campus, and having students on campus will truncate our ability to do that. And so it's a much deeper, more robust cleaning process than we've ever had before. And so we have to make sure that we have the time to do that.
There was also a question about IDs and lanyards. That's a great question, because at this time, we're currently still transitioning to the students having to wear their IDs visibly. So what we ask of them, and our students do not wear them around their neck like the teachers do. They just have to have their ID present with them. Many of the students clip it on their book bag with like one of the things that the college students use to kind of hold their IDs in place. When we do require the students to wear their IDs, we will provide them with lanyards, because part of the rules that we have to adhere to is that they have to be breakaway in the event that someone grabs them. And there's a couple other safety features that come in line with those.
We received a question about back to school night. So yes, back to school night is a different event than this. That'll be happening on the 23rd, and you should have received a communication about that. You'll receive more. Specifically, you'll get an invitation from your child's teacher with the Google Classroom code. So it will be similar to this in that it will be facilitated through a Google platform. The teacher will be streaming as if they were in class, like with your children. And it will be taking place like a normal back to school night. The difference is that normally when we have back to school night, it takes 2 nights because we're so big, that we actually have to split up between 2 separate evenings, 9 and 10, and then 11, 12. But maybe one of the only good things that has come out of COVID is that we can have it in a single evening, so that families don't have to make choices about, which night they're going to come to. So in this case, everyone's going to come the same night. And so, waiting for a couple more questions. Is it possible that we have answered the questions that we needed? So there's something that I would like to reinforce. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there, and I think the most important thing, having been in education for a while and always having worked at the high school level, I think it's very important that for me that I reinforce for you as parents. It is often tempting to begin to look at our high school level children as young adults, and they are, right? They're going to enter the school as old children, and when they walk across the stage in 4 years, they're going to be young adults. But in the interim, it's really extraordinarily important that you monitor and attend to them very carefully. Social media is a unique challenge, and it has created all sorts of unintended consequences. So I encourage you to be very attentive to that particular portion of your child's life, because things can get wildly out of control before you have any inkling that that's happening. So just keep that in mind. Will there be school pictures taken?
Yeah, I was just going to say we have a couple more questions. I was just going to read. Go ahead.
So yes, school pictures are going to be taken. We're going to have senior school pictures taken. Communication is going to come out about that very soon. There's been a trick about navigating it because obviously students can't be in the building with masks off, and no one wants to have a picture taken with their child with a mask on. So we've had to engage in some negotiations with our vendor about how we were going to do that, and we now have a resolution. So we're going to be moving forward with that. Communication is going to come out very soon. If a child is not feeling well, Dr. Godin, if you want to read one, I haven't read another.
Okay. There's one that says, regardless of attendance, if a child is not feeling well, can attend school, excuse me, are they able to attend virtually without being marked absent? That's very much in the discussion right now. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say the primary discussion that we had, the answer is yes, that can be done.
Mm-hmm.
But we will clarify that as we get closer toward the hybrid.
And can students get a break from their masks? No. Masks will be worn whenever someone is on campus in a building. It's a non-negotiable, and so when we're in hybrid, that's where we are. Masks will be worn. So someone asked if students can get a break from taking masks off. Let's see here for students who. Once hybrid starts, yes. So the question was, students who are at VOTEC for the half-day schedule and they're taking edge of year classes online, will that continue during hybrid? Absolutely. So hybrid, during hybrid instruction, students at VOTEC will still be taking those edge of year classes. Okay.
And so, again, I acknowledge that was one of the trickier things to navigate. In my own home, my one son is a shared time student between his high school and plumbing VOTEC, and we have a very similar case going on in my home right now.
And so we are hard up against the time when the server is going to crash. So I just want to finish with some remarks. There's a couple more questions that we can answer, but I will push that. I'll push those communications out individually through emails. So much of what you've heard this evening is operational. And while our discussion was in many ways operational, at its core, what we're discussing are the tools that we use to create the conditions for success for children. You don't need to know everything that was gone over this evening. If you're not sure about something, please give us a call or shoot us an email, and we'll give you the information that you seek. Or if we don't have an answer, if it's something new that we haven't come across, we'll figure it out together. There is something I absolutely want you to take away this evening, and that's this. We are focused on the refinement of the interests, intellect, skills, and competencies of our students. We are your partners, and we are always willing to help. Thank you, and have a great year.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure. I look forward to meeting everyone face to face, hopefully sometime soon.